Everybody knows right now this market is crazy. You can put a house on the market at 10 a.m. and by 11 a.m. you have multiple offers.
How to win bidding wars. Sean, tell us how to do this.
Brian, man, everybody knows right now this market is crazy. I mean, you can put a house on the market at 10 a.m. and by 11 a.m. you have multiple offers. So it's just been ridiculous. People don't even have time to get off of work and go see the property. Heck, you got to see a property online, and most times in a lot of markets, you have to buy it sight unseen. So It's crazy. So a couple of things that have worked for our clients, and I know some people have heard of it before, but one thing, I'll say is three main things, right? One in particular is the appraisal waiver. What the appraisal waiver is, basically, it guarantees the seller a certain amount based upon whatever you guys go into contract for. So for example, if you're in, some parts of California, if you have a $900,000 home and someone makes an offer of $950,000, but when the appraisal or appraiser comes in, if it only appraises for $900,000, the appraisal waiver basically gets the seller that $950,000, meaning that the buyer has to bring that difference $50,000 to closing. And so that goes a long way, because a lot of times sellers know that their property is overpriced, but they're trying to get as much as they can out of the deal. So I get it. In our market, the average price is closer to about $400,000. So it may be a situation where somebody may bid $425,000. So we've done that. We've bid it higher than the market value, and it appraised that $400,000, and my client made up the difference of the $25,000. So hey, you got to do what you got to do. If it's your dream home, it's a house that you really love, somewhere that you can see yourself staying for a long time with your family. Hey, if you have it, what's an additional $20,000? And I'm just using that as a rule of thumb. It could be $5,000 in some markets, $2,000 in other markets, $10,000 or whatever. But just, paying over that and waiving that appraisal waiver, and so that's pretty strong. Number two, this is one I think that a lot of buyers don't necessarily think about, because normally when you're going in as a buyer, you are kind of dictating the purchase agreement and a lot of the terms. You're saying, hey, I want to buy your property for this, and I want to close on this particular date, and this is the loan program we're going to use. So as a buyer, you're dictating a lot of the terms in the offer to purchase. And it could just be second nature with most agents, that just how we were taught to write up the offers. But one little secret tip that we've used that's helped a lot, as opposed to our buyers putting in their desired closing date, we communicate with the agent and tell the agent, hey, your seller can pick the closing date that works best for them. Right. Some sellers want to close fast. But some sellers need a little bit more time, like especially if they've been living in their house for a period of time. Just the thought of packing up and having to move everything, it's already hard enough that they had to consider that. So giving them the ability to pick the closing date that works best for them, that goes a long way. And so that's helped us tremendously.
And what have you noticed people, so when you give them like the close, like, hey, you can pick the closing date, like, do they typically pick like a fast one, or like, do they extend it, or what's been kind of like the feel for the market for the sellers?
Yep. So what happens normally is most sellers, their agent has probably already prepared them. In most markets, I would say for about a 30-day close. And I know like other markets, they close a little faster, but 30 days is pretty much average. So most listing agents have prepared their sellers for 30 days. And some sellers like, well, if the price is right, then I guess we'll work with the 30 days, right? So that's usually around about the expectation, but sometimes sellers need more time. And, if your buyer is in a situation where they don't have to be out of their place or wherever they are, within 30 days, let the seller pick a date that works best for them. And most of the time it works best for a situation where a seller needs more than 30 days. And so that's the thing about it, is most buyers believe, and a lot of buyers agents, obviously people feel like most people want their money sooner than later, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you might make an offer and say, hey, we can close in 21 days, not knowing that the seller actually needs more time. But if you don't ask those questions or even offer that opportunity, then you can miss getting that house under contract, even though you might have had a strong offer with good down payment, good financing terms and all that good stuff, good price, but your closing date could have been off for that particular seller. And another offer could have gave them that same option, an identical offer, but just giving them that option, and they'll opt to go with that offer as opposed to yours, because you had a 21-day closing and they really want to close in 60 days or 45 days or what have you. So let the seller pick the closing date. That's been a good one that's really worked for us.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I would say probably one of the biggest ones that's really worked for us, it's a little creative. And what that is normally in a real estate transaction, especially in a buyer's market. We're in a seller's market right now, but in a buyer's market, normally the buyer can negotiate for the seller to pay their closing costs, right? And so meaning like, when you go to buy a house or sell a house, there's cost associated with that. And every buyer or seller, if there's no agreement, the buyer would pay their own and the seller would pay their own. Well, we're in a seller's market right now, right? And it just has never been customary for buyers to pay sellers' closing costs. First of all, some lenders won't allow it, but a lot of them will, And so as long as you communicate with your lender and know that they will allow it, how we've won a few offers is we've actually agreed to pay the seller's closing costs. I mean, it just blew a lot of agents, listing agents and sellers' mind. They're like, what? Wait a minute. And the catch to that was this. So how I mentioned, with the appraisal waiver that, hey, if it doesn't appraise and so forth, my client will, pay X amount over. Well, what we add to that is, hey, if everything works out perfectly and it appraises exactly for the contract price, we want to put a little bit of a bonus to that. What we want to do is if it appraises, then we'll actually pay your seller's closing costs. And so the seller wins either way, because if it doesn't appraise, my buyer has agreed to come up with the difference. If it does appraise, my buyer is willing to pay the seller's closing costs. I mean, that just blew other offers away. I've had several agents to reach out to us and say, hey, you guys won this offer for that creativity. So that's a nice little tip and a nice little tidbit there.
That's great. Yeah, that is definitely something new in the market. Because, 5 years ago, that would have been like, just no.
Exactly. Right. Like, are you crazy? I'm telling you. Yes. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. So, this is a different market, so for that old saying, desperate times calls for desperate measures. Hey, you got to get creative in this market if you want to win and get your offer accepted. Hey, so if all of this made sense to you and you had any additional questions about, how to get your offers accepted in this crazy market we're in, feel free to reach out to me. You can message me, you could call me. My information is in my profile, or, you can shoot me a text. Either way, any way I can help, just reach out.